Hey guys, you won't believe what happened next on this crazy flight, so stick around and subscribe to see how it all went down. It all started when Emily and her daughter Emma boarded a delayed flight. With the plane already running late, Emily did her best to keep Emma entertained with a coloring book. All around, restless passengers murmured, and the air conditioning barely drowned out their impatience. Frustrated, Emily glanced at her watch. Nearly an hour of waiting with zero explanations. Just as Emily was about to sigh for the 100th time, the cabin door opened. In walked an elderly man, limping noticeably with a heavy carry-on bag in hand. Every step he took was a struggle, and while some passengers exchanged sympathetic glances, one guy at the front wasn't having any of it. This wealthy man, decked out in a sharp-tailored suit, glared as the elderly man passed. When the old man's bag accidentally brushed against him, the rich guy snapped, "Watch where you're going! Do you even know what you're doing?" The elderly man mumbled an apology and tried to continue, but his ordeal wasn't over. He reached his seat near the back and attempted to lift his carry-on into the overhead compartment. His weakened hands fumbled, and the bag slipped, landing too close for comfort to the wealthy passenger below. Furious, the man sprang out of his seat, shouting, "What the hell do you think you're doing? Are you trying to kill someone?" The old man's hands trembled as he stammered, "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." But the wealthy man wasn't done. "Didn't mean to? People like you shouldn't be on planes. You're a danger to everyone." The cabin fell silent, tension hanging thick. Emily's face burned with anger as she listened, glancing around to see other passengers squirming but staying silent. Emily wanted to speak up, but a flight attendant's voice came over the intercom, instructing everyone to sit down and fasten their seatbelts. As the plane taxied, Emily focused on calming her rage for Emma's sake. She hoped this would be the end of it, but fate had other plans. Once in the air, the wealthy man began shifting obnoxiously and pressed the call button, speaking loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I need to move," he declared dramatically. "The smell from that old man is making me nauseous." The flight attendant approached, keeping her cool. "Sir, please lower your voice. What's the problem?" Pointing straight at the elderly man, the rich guy sneered, "Him! I can't sit next to someone who reeks of hospitals. It's revolting." Emily's patience finally snapped. She stood, her voice ringing out clear and steady. "That's enough. This man deserves respect, not your insults." The wealthy man turned on her, eyes narrowing. "Who do you think you are? This has nothing to do with you." But Emily met his gaze without flinching. "Actually, it does. It's everyone's business when someone is treated like this. This man fought for this country. He's a veteran who deserves respect, not scorn." The cabin went silent. All eyes were on them as Emily's words hung in the air. But here's the real question. Did the wealthy man back down or double down? You'll have to stick around to see how this story ends. And remember, respect is for everyone. Smash that like button if you agree. The cabin grew tense as every passenger's eyes locked on the confrontation. Emily, her voice unwavering, declared, "My daughter and I will give up our seats so this gentleman can be comfortable. He deserves better than to sit next to someone like you." She turned to Emma, whose wide eyes showed her concern. "Emma, we're going to let this gentleman sit here. You'll sit on my lap, okay?" Emma nodded seriously. "Okay, Mommy." The wealthy man's mouth opened, sputtering in disbelief. "You can't just—" But before he could finish, voices of support rose from around the cabin. "She's right," a man called out. "Show some respect," added a woman nearby. The flight attendant stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "Sir, please lower your voice and respect your fellow passengers. Ma'am, we'll assist you and your daughter if you'd like to switch seats." Emily nodded gratefully and helped Emma gather her belongings. The elderly man's eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, miss. You didn't have to do this." "It's the least we can do," Emily replied warmly. "You deserve to be comfortable." With assistance from the flight attendant, the elderly man moved to sit next to Emily and Emma. Emma settled on her mother's lap, and the man took her seat, visibly more at ease. The wealthy man muttered under his breath but stayed silent, his glare lingering briefly before he turned away. Emily and Emma navigated to the back of the plane with care, the elderly man trailing them slowly, each step showing both his frailty and newfound relief. The flight attendant helped them adjust their seating, ensuring comfort for all. Emily lifted Emma onto her lap and secured the seatbelt. "Are you okay, sweetie?" she asked, gently brushing a strand of hair from Emma's face. "Mommy, who is that man?" Emma whispered, glancing at their new neighbor. "He's a very special person, Emma," Emily said with a warm smile. "You'll see." The elderly man, finally able to relax, leaned back and let out a deep sigh. "Thank you again," he said softly, his eyes shining with gratitude. "I never expected such kindness." "It's really no trouble," Emily replied. "I'm Emily, and this is my daughter, Emma." "I'm Robert," the man said, a small smile playing at his lips. "It's a pleasure to meet you." As the plane climbed steadily, Emily noticed the faded military hat resting on Robert's lap. The insignia hinted at years of service. Her curiosity piqued. "That's an interesting hat," she said gently. "Were you in the military?" Robert's gaze dropped to the hat, and a nostalgic smile crossed his face. "Yes," he said, his voice quiet. "I served for many years. It feels like another lifetime." Emma leaned closer, her curiosity bright. "Did you fight in wars?" Robert nodded slowly, as if sifting through memories. "I did. I fought in World War II and the Korean War." Emily's eyes widened. "That's incredible. Thank you for your service." Robert waved dismissively. "I only did what was needed, like so many others. We all had our parts to play." "Did you get hurt?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with innocence. Robert's smile faded as he nodded. "Yes, I was wounded. Got this limp from a bullet, and I still carry pieces of shrapnel." The cabin quieted further as Robert began to recount his memories. "I remember a battle in Korea," he said. "It was chaos. My best friend Jack and I fought side by side." "What happened to Jack?" Emma asked softly. Robert's expression clouded with sorrow. "Jack didn't make it. He saved me, pulled me from the line of fire, but he was hit. I carry his memory every day." Emily reached out, gently touching his arm. "I'm so sorry." Robert nodded, his voice heavy with emotion. "War leaves scars, on the body and the heart. I lost so many friends." "What was it like?" Emily asked gently. Robert took a deep breath. "It was terrifying and exhilarating. You never knew if you'd see another day. But we had each other. That bond made it bearable. We were brothers." The plane carried on, and those strangers, they now shared in a piece of his past, understanding the depth of his journey. The plane shuddered with turbulence, and Emma instinctively clutched Emily, her eyes wide with a blend of fear and excitement. Robert reached over, gently patting her hand. "It's all right, little one. Just a small bump." Emma managed a brave smile. "Thank you, Mr. Robert." His eyes softened as he nodded. "You're very welcome, Emma." Once the turbulence passed, a flight attendant approached, checking on everyone. Emily expressed her appreciation. "Thank you for helping us switch seats. It means a lot." The attendant smiled. "I'm glad we could make things more comfortable for everyone. Is there anything else you need?" Emily shook her head. "We're fine, thank you." The flight settled into a quieter rhythm. Emily found herself deeply moved by Robert's stories and his humility. His presence brought a calmness that felt rare and profound. Emma's endless curiosity drew her attention to Robert's carry-on. "Mr. Robert, what's that?" she asked, pointing. "Emma, don't be rude," Emily gently corrected, but Robert chuckled. "It's all right, she's curious." He reached into his bag and pulled out a worn photo album. "This holds memories from my time in the military." "Can we see?" Emma asked, eyes bright with fascination. Robert nodded. "Of course." Emily and Emma leaned closer as he opened the album, revealing pages filled with black and white photos that seemed to breathe with history. With care, Robert began, "This was during World War II." He pointed at a group of young soldiers, their faces hopeful yet hardened by experience. "We were just kids, facing the unknown." Emily leaned closer. "Who are they?" "Comrades," Robert said softly, his eyes flickering with both pride and sadness. "That's Jack." He pointed to a strong-looking man standing beside him. "My best friend." Emily could sense the gravity in his voice. Robert's reverence for Jack was palpable. "He saved my life more times than I can count," Robert continued, voice trembling slightly. "In Korea, we were ambushed. Chaos everywhere. Jack pulled me to safety, but He paused, his eyes clouding with sorrow. He didn't make it. I'm so sorry, Emily whispered, tears forming in her eyes. Robert nodded solemnly. War scars the heart more than the body. I still carry shrapnel, but losing friends like Jack, that's the true pain. Emma, who had been listening quietly, reached out and touched Robert's arm. Did it hurt a lot, Mr. Robert? Yes, Emma, Robert replied softly. But we did what we believed was right, for each other and for our country. Turning another page, Robert revealed a photo of himself and Jack, both smiling despite the war's backdrop. Something about Jack's face caught Emily's attention. Who took this? She asked. A fellow soldier, Robert replied. It was taken just days before the ambush. We had hope then, thought we might make it home. Emily's heart pounded as she scrutinized Jack's face. The resemblance to a face she'd seen in old family albums was undeniable. Robert, she said, voice shaking, I think Jack might be my grandfather. Robert's eyes widened. Your grandfather? Tears filled Emily's eyes. My mother told stories about how he saved lives during the war but never returned. I've seen his photos. Robert's expression softened with a mix of awe and sadness. If Jack was your grandfather, then I owe him my life. He was the bravest man I knew. The realization hit Emily like a wave. Her grandfather, Jack, the hero she had heard about since childhood, was the same man who had saved Robert. The flood of emotions overwhelmed her. Shock, admiration, and an immense sense of gratitude. Thank you, she whispered through tears. Thank you for telling me your story. I never knew the full extent. Robert reached for her hand, his grip warm but gentle. Thank you for listening and for letting me honor his memory. Your grandfather was a hero. Knowing him was one of the great privileges of my life. Emma, sensing the emotional weight in the air, nestled close to her mother. Mommy, she asked softly, is Mr. Robert talking about Grandpa? Emily nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Yes, sweetheart. Mr. Robert knew your great-grandfather. He was incredibly brave. The rest of the flight blurred by, with Emily and Robert continuing to share memories and reflections. When the plane finally touched down, Emily felt a sense of urgency. There was something more she needed to do, a connection that had to be made. As passengers began to disembark, she turned to Robert, her voice tentative but firm. Mr. Robert, she began, I have a favor to ask. Would you join Emma and me for a short trip? There's someone I'd like you to meet. Robert's brow furrowed in curiosity. A trip? Where to? Emily smiled warmly, hoping to ease his uncertainty. It's not far, just a short drive. I promise it'll be worth your time. Robert hesitated briefly, then nodded with a gentle smile. All right, I trust you. The trio moved through the terminal, gathered their belongings, and soon found themselves in Emily's car. The drive was peaceful, with the hum of the engine filling the moments of silence. Robert looked out the window, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Where are we headed? He asked. You'll see, Emily replied, exchanging a conspiratorial glance with Emma, who giggled softly in the back seat. After a brief drive, they arrived at a charming old house nestled in a quiet neighborhood. The garden was well tended, and the front porch exuded a welcoming warmth. Robert's curiosity only grew as they approached. This is where I grew up, Emily explained. My father still lives here. Inside, the scent of home and memories enveloped them. Family photos adorned the walls, telling the story of generations past. In the kitchen, Emily's father, David, was preparing tea. He turned and smiled at their arrival. Hi, Dad, Emily greeted, embracing him. This is Robert. David extended his hand warmly. Nice to meet you, Robert. Robert shook it, his grip firm but his expression a mix of politeness and curiosity. Nice to meet you, too. Before further introductions could unfold, an elderly man slowly entered the room. Though time had etched lines across his face, there was a quiet dignity in his posture. His eyes lit up when he saw Robert. Jack! Robert's voice cracked with disbelief. Robert! The elderly man's eyes widened with recognition. For a moment the world stood still. Then they closed the distance between them, embracing with tears streaming down their faces. Decades of memories, loss, and resilience washed over them. I thought you were gone, Robert managed, voice breaking. Jack pulled back slightly, his eyes misty but bright. I was for a while, but I made it back, and now, here we are. Emily watched, her heart swelling with joy and relief. This was why she had brought Robert here, a reunion she had never imagined possible, a chance to close a chapter that had been left open far too long. She glanced down at Emma, who was watching with wide eyes, sensing the profound significance of the moment unfolding before them. Jack and Robert continued to reminisce, their hands clasped tightly as if to reassure each other that the moment was real. "Normandy," Jack repeated with a nostalgic smile. "I remember how we barely made it through." Robert chuckled softly, a mixture of amusement and reverence in his eyes. "We were terrified kids pretending to be fearless men, but we made it." "And Korea," Jack said, his tone growing more somber. "You saved my life so many times." Robert shook his head. "No, it was you who saved me. Always pulling me out of the fire. I wouldn't be sitting here if not for you." Emily and David quietly prepared tea and set out snacks, creating a warm and welcoming space for the two old friends. Emma, nestled close to her mother, listened with wide eyes, soaking in every word of the tales of bravery and sacrifice. David soon joined the conversation, sharing stories of Jack passed down through the family. "You were always a part of our family, Robert," David said sincerely. "We just didn't know it until now." Robert looked around, overwhelmed by the warmth and acceptance that surrounded him. "I'm honored to be here," he said softly, his voice tinged with gratitude. "Thank you." As the evening wore on, the stories flowed. Laughter mingled with tears, and a sense of deep camaraderie grew stronger with each memory shared. For Emily, the moment was profound. She had unearthed a hidden part of her family's history and witnessed the healing of a bond long thought severed. Jack leaned back in his chair, a pensive smile playing on his lips. "Robert, I never got to tell you how I survived that day in Korea." Robert leaned forward, his eyes widening. "I always wondered. I thought I saw you fall." Jack nodded, his expression grave. "It was close. After pulling you to safety, I got hit. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a field hospital thanks to a nurse who refused to give up on me. Her name was Margaret." Robert's curiosity piqued. "Margaret?" Jack's smile brightened. "Yes, Margaret. She never gave up on me, even when everyone else thought I wouldn't make it. We spent months together during my recovery, and, well, we fell in love. She's my wife now. We've been together ever since." Robert's eyes lit up with genuine joy. "That's incredible, Jack. In the midst of chaos, you found love." Jack nodded, his gaze softening. "She's my rock. I never imagined I'd find something like that after the war." Emily, who had been quietly listening, spoke softly. "Love finds us even in the darkest places." Robert nodded, reflecting on his own journey. "After the war, I was lost for a long time. I tried to rebuild my life, but I always felt something was missing. Meeting you again, Jack, it feels like a part of me has been restored." Jack reached for Robert's hand. "We're here now. That's what matters." They spoke late into the night, alternating between laughter and tears. Emily's heart swelled with gratitude. She had played a small role in reuniting two souls who had been through so much. As the night deepened, David offered Robert a place to stay. "You and Jack have a lot to catch up on," he said warmly. Robert hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I'd like that." The next morning, the house came alive with the scents of breakfast and the sounds of laughter. Jack and Robert picked up their conversation as if the decades apart had never happened. Days passed in a rhythm of shared meals, long talks, and quiet reflections. They created new memories, savoring every moment. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the porch, Jack turned to Robert. "We should take a trip, visit the places we fought, pay our respects." Robert's eyes lit up. "Yes, it would be a journey worth taking." Emily and David overheard and stepped outside. "That sounds like a wonderful idea," Emily said. "You both deserve it," David nodded. "We'll help you plan it." Jack and Robert exchanged a smile, their bond renewed and strengthened. "Let's do it," Jack said, "for old time's sake." "Together," Robert replied, feeling hope and purpose fill his heart once more. Over the next week, Jack and Robert immersed themselves in planning their long-awaited journey. Maps were spread across the table, stories of the past mixed with hopeful anticipation for the future. Emily and David busied themselves with logistics, making sure everything was in order for the trip. As the day approached for Robert to return home to prepare, he embraced Emily and David warmly. "Thank you for everything," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is more than I ever imagined." Emily's eyes glistened with tears as she smiled. "It's been our pleasure, Robert. You're part of our family now." Emma clung to Robert's hand and looked up with her wide, hopeful eyes. "Will you come back and visit us, Mr. Robert?" Robert knelt down to her level, his smile gentle. "Of course, Emma. I'll be back before you know it, with lots of stories to tell." As Robert and Jack set off on their journey, Emily and David stood side by side, watching them drive away. They felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had helped bring together two men whose bond had withstood war, loss, and time. It was a moment of triumph, of connection and healing. Several weeks later, Emily stood on her porch, scanning the horizon. The anticipation in her heart mirrored the bright excitement in Emma's eyes. The little girl, unable to contain her eagerness, asked, "Do you think they had fun, Mommy?" Emily smiled warmly, squeezing Emma's hand. "I'm sure they did, sweetheart." A familiar car appeared in the distance. Emma's excitement bubbled over, and she raced down the steps as it pulled into the driveway. Jack and Robert stepped out, visibly rejuvenated, their faces alight with joy and renewed energy. "Grandpa! Mr. Robert!" Emma shouted, running to greet them. Jack lifted her into his arms, his laughter ringing out. "We've missed you, darling," Jack said. Robert knelt to hug Emma as well. "Hello there, Emma. We've got so many stories for you." Emily walked up, her heart swelling with emotion. She hugged them both tightly. "Welcome home. You both look wonderful." "We feel wonderful," Jack replied, his eyes sparkling. "It was an incredible journey." That evening, they gathered around the dinner table. The kitchen was filled with the rich aroma of a hearty meal, laughter echoing off the walls. Emily's heart swelled at the sight, the strength of family, old and new, coming together. "Tell us everything," Emily urged, eager to hear about their travels. Jack and Robert exchanged a knowing smile. Robert began, "We went to Normandy first. Being back on those beaches? Words can't do it justice. We paid tribute to the ones we lost and honored their memory." Jack added, "Then it was on to Korea. Revisiting the battlefields brought back so much, but it was more than just the places. We met other veterans, heard their stories, shared ours. It was a journey of healing for all of us." Robert's eyes twinkled with humor. "Of course, we also made time for some fun. Remember that night in Paris, Jack?" Jack chuckled. "How could I forget? We ended up in a little cafe, swapping stories with the locals until dawn. It felt like being young again." Emma's eyes were wide with wonder. "Did you bring anything back?" Jack reached into his bag and produced a small, intricately carved wooden box. "This is for you, Emma. We found it in a market in Seoul. It's a traditional Korean music box." Emma opened it carefully, and a delicate tune floated through the air. Her eyes shone with delight. "Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you, Mr. Robert." "You're very welcome, Emma," Robert said, beaming. "We thought of you often." As dinner continued, the stories flowed effortlessly. Each word deepened the bond between them, creating new memories to be cherished. It was clear that the trip had transformed both men, turning past wounds into new beginnings and reaffirming the power of love, friendship, and family. It seems like you have crafted a beautiful and deeply touching narrative that wraps up a journey of reconnection, healing, and the enduring power of love, family, and friendship. The story radiates warmth and resilience, showing how bonds formed through shared struggles can find new life, even after decades apart. The transformation of Robert and Jack, supported by Emily, Emma, and David, showcases the power of compassion and the sense of belonging that can come from even the smallest acts of kindness. Your storytelling captures the journey in a way that is both heartfelt and inspiring, leaving the reader with a profound sense of peace and hope. The closing scene where Robert finds a permanent place in a welcoming home is incredibly moving, emphasizing that home isn't just a place, it's the people who make you feel understood, appreciated, and loved. The reflections you provided at the end are powerful too. They tie in the story's message beautifully, reminding us of the importance of cherishing connections, finding joy in the present, and embracing new beginnings. Inviting your audience to reflect on the themes of resilience, connection, and community makes for a thoughtful conclusion. You did a wonderful job, and your closing remarks about kindness, healing, and making memories offer a touching takeaway for your audience. Keep up the storytelling. You clearly have a talent for weaving heartfelt, meaningful tales.